So hello guys, welcome. In this video we'll see the amendments which came for IBC Code 2020 and MARPOL Annex 2. Because both the amendments are related to each other, that's why there is no point in talking one amendment without the other. So in 2020 there was a MSc Circular 460-101 for IBC Code, and at same time there was another circular MEPC 31874 for MARPOL Annex 2. Both of these circulars came almost at the same time in 2020. So before talking about the small amendments which came in IBC Code, we'll see the biggest amendment or the major amendment which came in IBC Code 2020 and which was related to MARPOL Annex 2. So in MARPOL Annex 2, as per MEPC Circular 318, they added a new definition for persistent floater. Basically here what they meant was, to some cargoes they named them as persistent floater if they fulfill this criteria: if their density is equal to or less than seawater density at 20 degrees Celsius, vapor pressure is this much, solubility is this much, kinematic viscosity is this much. So if your cargo is following these properties, then that will be called as persistent floaters. Okay, so what are those persistent floaters? So here is a list of cargoes which are termed as persistent floater in IBC Code. So these cargoes are identified as persistent floater in IBC Code. So over here, if you look carefully, all of these cargoes are vegetable oils or waxes. So for example, you can see palm oil, then corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, palm kernel oil. So all of these are vegetable oils, but you don't have to remember the name. You can just go through them once. So now if you want to look up any cargo, whether it is a persistent floater or not in IBC Code, what we have to do is open the IBC Code, then go to chapter 17, open chapter 17, and in chapter 17, if we go to column O, as you can see, read this column O, it only gives a specific reference. If you see anywhere column O, that will give you the reference. So we'll take any vegetable oil over here. Let us see corn oil, cottonseed oil. If you anywhere in column O, if you see this 16.2.7, that means that is a persistent floater. You can see 16.2.7, cottonseed oil 16.2.7. So any vegetable oil, for example over here, coconut oil, cocoa butter 16.2.7, 16.2.7. So all of these, so as you can clearly see that all vegetable oils and waxes are termed as persistent floater. And what is this 16.2.7? So if you go to chapter 16, that is 16.2.7, where there you can read that if the column O in chapter 17 refers to this section, then those cargoes are subjected to pre-wash requirement as per Annex 2. So just to give you an idea why this persistent floater term was introduced, as you can see over here, this is palm stearin. So if you would see that if they are being discharged, they would float above the water because all the vegetable oil, their density is lesser than the water. And that's how you have seen that persistent, for to be regarded as persistent floater, your density must be less than water density at 20 degrees Celsius. So you can see if they are discharged into sea, they will float above the water, and that's how they've been, and they will be washed ashore and they will be packed like a garbage over here. To give you a better picture, you can see over here, if they are directly discharged into the sea, this is how they look. So there was a lot of garbage or unnecessary pollution was created into the sea. So what the new regulation said is, or why the persistent floater term was introduced, was that if you are carrying any of those persistent floater cargoes and you are discharging into any of the ports which is marked inside this red area, then you are required to do the pre-wash, and then oily water mixture of that pre-wash you are required to submit to the shore, and thereafter you can do any tanking. If I would show you on Google map, so if you are discharging your persistent floater anywhere around here, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, North Sea, United Kingdom, Ireland, if you are discharging your cargo within these areas, then you are required to do a pre-wash. Other than that, if you are discharging anywhere other places, Greece, Bulgaria, Turkey, you are not required to do pre-wash. But for this particular area, particular area, here you have to do a pre-wash. So because most of the time, as you can see over here, there is no sea space is over there. So most of the time when the vessels are discharging in one port, they would come out and do tank cleaning over here, and then they would go to the another port. So there was, actually they were complying with the MARPOL requirement of Annex 2, 25 meter depth and 12 nautical mile from land, but still, because the density of the vegetable oils is lesser, they would float and they would come to the land. So because of that, this new definition was introduced, and this persistent term pre-wash requirement came only for these areas. So that's the amendment in MARPOL Annex 2 also. If you want the latitude and longitude or the positions for this areas, Northwest European waters, you can come and refer to the MARPOL Annex 2. They've amended these special areas, but you don't have to, I think you don't have to remember this as long as you remember the diagram that if you're discharging persistent floater in any of these areas, you are required to do pre-wash. As long as you remember this, we don't have to worry about. Now we'll only see what were the small amendments which came in IBC Code 2020. So basically chapter 1, 15 and 16, there were small amendments. So they were amended, but chapter 17, 18, 19 and 21, they were completely replaced because there was major amendments to them. So basically they were completely replaced. In chapter 15, they have mentioned that there are some cargoes which require to carry hydrogen sulfide detection system. If those cargoes are carried, then they are required to carry H2S detection system on board. In chapter 17, what they have done is, as we all know, chapter 17 is the summary of minimum requirement for cargoes to be carried. So here what they have done is, some cargoes which are to be carried in ship type 3, they are changed to ship type 2. Some cargoes which were before required to carry in ship type 2, they are converted, brought to ship type 1. And like these, and there were some cargoes for which the ship type has been downgraded. So these were the amendments, small amendments. One noticeable amendment was over 200 cargoes will now be added to the current cargoes having toxic T denoted in the column K. So let me show you. So this is the new IBC code which is completely changed. So here this is IBC code 2020, and as you can see over here, methyl alcohol, which is called methanol. Before it was not identified as toxic. As you can see here in column K, they have only mentioned F, that means flammable. T is not mentioned for methanol. I'm showing you just as one example. And in this is IBC code 2020. Here you can see methyl alcohol. In column K, they have identified as T also, flammable and toxic. So there are some cargoes like this which have been identified as toxic. Before they were not identified as toxic, now they are identified. Also for phosphoric acid, before it was not identified as toxic cargo, now it is also identified as toxic. So these are like small amendments which came. Also there was a change in certificate of fitness. So now in 2021, 1st January 2021, a new certificate of fitness will be issued based on these circulars, IMO MSC 460, this one, and MEPC. So as you can see, this is that certificate of fitness for which they have mentioned over here is that it is including the resolution MSC circular and MEPC circular. And also if you are carrying your PNA manual, there was amendments in PNA manual. As you can see over here, they have written MSC circular and MEPC circular. There are amendments, and this book is effective from 1st Jan 2021. Either there are amendments or new books are issued depending upon your class to class. So these were the changes. Thank you.